Welcome back, everybody, to the Road to 1,000 Users live stream. I'm John Mello. I am building an application for Bubble freelancers. Bubble is a platform to build applications on, and I'm building an app to help people who build apps. The fact that I think you have to be very creative about finding your first set of users and who are you solving this problem for. Why should anybody use your platform or be interested in it? And take the time to give you feedback. So I'm trying to document that process as I go through it myself, because I see a lot of people struggle with this, and I struggle with it too. I don't think there's any easy way to do this, to translate an app idea that a client has in their head or that a founder has in their head and turn that into an actionable technical plan, right? And this is, if for those of you that are product managers, I think it is product people. That's kind of that. Like, there's a whole job dedicated to that thing, and Bubble freelancers kind of just take on all of that, all of the scoping, the sales, the collecting payment, invoicing, accounting. All you're responsible for all of that. That's a lot. That's a very wide variety of skill sets that is required if you're doing your own Bubble work. If you're not partnering with another agency that just kind of gives you work and pays you to do it, like the AirDev model, for example, that's a little bit easier on a freelancer. But if it's just you and you're looking for clients and you're scoping the work, you're doing the work, delivering the work, and then getting paid for that, that's a very broad set of skills. And one of those part of that, I think, is really being mindful about what you agree to, right? So saying no to certain requests. I think the mentality, especially in the beginning, is like, well, this is my first client. I want to make them happy. If I don't do this right, this is like my only reference point for the fact that I am a valid freelancer, right? This is like my only thing. That's concerning. That's definitely the mentality that I had. But it sets you up to be a yes person, and you don't want to be a yes person. Nobody respects a yes person, right? People respect when you draw boundaries and push back and have an opinion and a thought process of your own. If the attitude of the client is, and I very rarely come into these people, but if the attitude is, I'm paying you, you do what I say, that is a red flag. You need to take a step back from that, because that's going to set you up for a miserable relationship. Don't get into a client relationship if that is the attitude of your client or founder. I have definitely a couple, maybe one person that I can think of comes to mind had that attitude. I think that's more prevalent. That kind of attitude and way of thinking is more prevalent in an employment situation where your boss or the CEO of your company says, I sign your paycheck, you need to do exactly what I say. Um, I actually spoke to someone over the weekend that had exactly that thought, and this dude was super overwhelmed, just like taking calls on a Saturday, like while at a party, you're taking like work calls. Like, that's crazy. I don't want to live that lifestyle. So, but there's and when I dug a little bit, it's like because he was talking about how busy he was, and when I dug a little bit as to why, and I asked him like, well, how often do you like say no to your CEO's requests? And he was like, oh, well, I tried that once, and I got the answer of, oh, well, I sign your check, so you do what I say. The worst thing you can do as a freelancer is feel trapped, like you're trapped into a project. That's a horrible feeling. It's like it feels like the project is never going to end, right? It feels like there's no light at the end of the tunnel. You're going to be a slave to this person forever. Just weird, because I don't know why this happens. But it definitely comes with agreeing to more work than you were prepared to do. Or, of course, scope creep is a thing, where they just ask for little things that add up to a large body amount of work that you're not being paid for. You may have thought it was going to be easy, and then it wasn't as easy as you thought it was going to be, and you don't wind up getting paid for that time. So first off, I think there's something of just flat out saying, like, if you know that they're asking for something that is outside of what you agreed to, the answer should be no. We didn't talk about that. We can look at that as part of a separate scope as part of a separate block of work, or just, this is going to be this much extra. A hard part of it is kind of estimating what that cost would be. But that's okay. Like, there's nothing wrong with saying, like, we didn't talk about this. We have to address this as a separate body of work. There's nothing wrong with that. You're setting a boundary for yourself, confidence in yourself that, like, I know what I'm doing. I know how long this takes, and I can't fit that into what we've already agreed on. This has to wait. I don't think there's anything wrong with that. I think so. Rushing to say yes to something to make your client happy in the short term definitely sets you up for some bad practices and just bad. I think just bad. Like, it's going to get to your head eventually. Like, you're going to feel stressed out. So really vetting what your the request is, right? So the request, like, I think in some cases you have to start building in order to really see what the roadblocks are going to be. But I think you can also vet, like, okay, I've done this before. I know how to do this. That this is going to take me this long. I can charge a reason, I can estimate how long it's going to take. I'll agree to that. But if there's something that you've never done before, don't say yes. Say, I'm going to look into that. I'm going to look into that. Let me get back to you with my approach. And this should be very, granular, right? It should be something very specific. Like, I want to implement video conferencing into the app, right? I had never done that before. A client recently just asked me to do that, but I didn't know what was involved. So I was hesitant to, like, agree until I really understood, all right, this implementation is going to look like this. This is the plugin that I need. These are the workflows that I'm going to have to build. Like, I had a good understanding before I even agreed to it. And aside from that, even if you do agree to something, and this is something that is tough for freelancers, tough for me. If you do agree to something, if you find yourself saying yes to something that was way more work than you thought it was going to be, I think it's okay. You should be working with a client that says, that understands that, like, this type of work is subject to the roadblocks that you're going to come into. It's very hard to anticipate. So if you go back and say, look, client, I thought this was going to be this much work when I told you that, but it's really going to be this. We're going to have to address this. We can do this one subpart, but this part of that thing that you asked for is going to have to be separately paid for, or something to that effect. I've never gotten a bad reaction when I did that, right? So the more transparent I was with the client, the more they trusted me. And if they knew that I was stressed out because I had taken on a bit off more than I could chew in one aspect or another, they were for the most part understanding. They weren't like, oh, well, you said this, dude, now you have to do it. It's never gone that way with my clients. And part of that is because I vet my clients very well, their attitudes about going in. Someone asked me recently, like, who is your, how do you, profile your clients, or what do you look for? I think the number one thing is their attitude, like their attitude towards development. Like, do they think this is going to be an event? How much and how long? If I get those questions, I'm already like, you don't understand how this works yet. You have to I'll have to launch into a conversation about how this is a process. And if they're open to that, if they're open to changing their thinking a little bit, I'll be open to working with them. But for those that are like deadlines, or I don't hear from you from a month, and then all of a sudden you come back and you want something done in like 2 days, no, it doesn't work that way. Boundaries are super important, and something nobody teaches you outside of the freelance world. It's a soft skill that you have to develop. But it starts from, like, your own confidence. I think your own confidence in yourself, and, like, there will be another client, right? And that's the big thing I tell myself is, like, there's always going to be someone else, even if I've screwed up tons of client, well, not tons, I exaggerate, right? So I've screwed up probably like 2 to 3 client relationships in the beginning for overpromising, underpricing myself, agreeing to things that I shouldn't have agreed to, just not knowing, right? Maybe everyone has to kind of go through that to really understand what it is to do freelancing. But it's not the end of the world. Like, like there's another client out there. If you keep going, you keep trying and keep reaching out to people, you're going to get a yes. And then when you get that yes, it's easier to get another yes. So those first few projects, I think, are those are the worst. Those fucking suck. But it does get easier for anybody that is kind of struggling with a project that they're on now. It does get easier. You will get out of this project. You're not locked into it. It's kind of in your head that you're locked into it. But I think being transparent and telling the client or the person that you're working with, really about the struggle that you're going through of like, hey, I didn't know this was going to be like this. That's where relief comes from. So not much, honestly. I felt a little bit stagnant in the last week. I don't feel like I'm talking to as many people about freelancing. I haven't had any new mom tests. I think in the last like 2 weeks, no new users, no new Twitch followers. But I have been building a lot. I've been working through the feedback that I am getting from the people that are using the app actively. I mentioned last week that I started tracking the usage and how people are using the app in a few different functionalities. And people are clicking on the RFPs, which is good. That I like that. I like to see who's actually engaging, and those are the people that I can follow up with and say, hey, what else do you want to see here? That has actually been problem. So I've been working. I've gotten 18 pieces of feedback that I'm working through or have already worked through. That's really all I have to say about this week. Again, not a lot going on here. I think feeling a little bit stagnant. I mean, I had to zoom out today. The reality is I've only been working at this app for 2 months. And I do have 42 users, and that is in itself kind of an accomplishment. So I had to remind myself of that today because the feedback is not coming in as fast as I would like. I want more feedback, and I'm struggling to get people to really like tell me what they want, and I'm not sure why that is. It may just be a timing thing. I may just be getting impatient and just wanting it to happen faster than it should. So that I'm mindful that could be it. But I also feel like I'm pulling teeth when trying to be like, hey, is like, what else do you want to see here? Like, what else would be helpful for you as you're reaching out to clients? Maybe I nailed it. Maybe that's like what's there is just like it's good enough. I don't know. People are using it and they're not telling me anything to change. So maybe I should just take that as, like this is good. But I don't know. I feel like there's more to it than that. I'm not sure which way to think about this. Kind of a final thought here for freelancers is that your clients should never have to ask you where you are with your app. This is one thing that I think I've done well. My clients don't ask me, hey, John, where are we with this? Where are we with this feature? They know because I built the tool to tell them. But if they're getting to you within like 2 weeks has passed and you haven't communicated any progress on what you're building for them, that to me that's not a good practice. I think you should be constantly updating them. They should know exactly where you are at all times within the app, within reason. Some of my clients, it's interesting because some of my clients know Bubble, so they can actually understand what it is that I'm building. Like I can communicate them in Bubble terms, like, oh, I put a constraint on this repeating group, and this, now it's working better than it was with this plugin that we were trying to use. So that is fun. Actually, it's actually good. I think keeping clients in the dark, because I've had projects where I was in the dark, when I had built an app a few years ago, the one that I quit my job over, it was being coded in Ruby, and I didn't know Ruby. So I was constantly in the dark, and that's a shitty feeling that, like someone's out there building your app and you have no idea how they're building it, what they're doing, how much progress they made. And then they come back to you after a month of not saying anything and like, oh, here you go, John, here's your Ruby app. Have fun. Like, what the fuck am I supposed to do with this? I can't do anything with this. I can't change anything. I can't like iterate on anything that I'm getting. So I think especially with Bubble, and this is unique to Bubble, I don't think we've ever had a development platform where your clients can understand the technical specifications of how you're building your app, the app for them. I think the more that they know, the more transparent you are about that, the better. I think that is, and I think the fear there as a developer would be like, well, the client's going to get up your ass and just kind of tell you how to do things. I suppose that is a you know a it could be a problem, but again, I just haven't had that experience yet. Part of the soft skills is like setting those boundaries and being like, I appreciate your feedback, but this is like X, X, and X of why we shouldn't do it that way. But in more times than not, it's been a good thing. It's been a good thing that they understand what happens in their app, that they can make minor tweaks to their app if they, they don't have to ask me to do every little thing. Like if they want to change the color or the font of something, they can do that. So them knowing, having a slight understanding of Bubble, I encourage that. I encourage that with my clients to take an interest in the way that their app is being built so that they have some degree of control over what's happening. All right, what if something happens to me and I can't, work on the app for some extended period of time? They should be able to step in and make some minor changes that they're not completely reliant on me. So that takes a lot of pressure off me as a developer, them being able to go in and make tweaks in the app. If you're watching this on YouTube, try to join the Twitch stream, twitch.tv/bubblehack, 11 a.m. Eastern Daylight Time, because now we're in daylight time, not standard time anymore. So try and enjoy the live stream. Let's get a conversation going around either Bubble freelancing, Bubble in general, or if you're building your own app, how are you finding your first 1,000 users? I think I want to know, and I want to talk about that with you. All right. Aaron, thank you, buddy. Thanks for joining. Appreciate that. All right, everybody. I will catch you next week. Thank you. Thank you. Catch you later.